How long can you stay? With your skilled worker visa, normally the maximum years you can stay in the UK is 5 years before you can extend it when it expires. Since I made mention of switching or changing visas, I know some people will be thinking, does it mean if I'm on a visit visa, I can switch or change my visa to a skilled worker visa? Note that it's not all types of visas that you can change to a skilled worker visa or you can change to another visa.
You know just what you do to me. Play my emotions like a pair of...
Welcome to today's episode. On today's episode, I'm basically going to explain what the skilled worker visa means or the tier 2 visa means and some of the procedure you need to go through when applying for your skilled worker visa. If you are somebody planning to relocate to the UK to work, irrespective of your profession, then this video is for you. If this is also something that interests you, then please stay tuned. To qualify for a skilled worker visa, you should be able to work for a UK employer that has been approved by the Home Office. That is, that particular employer should have a sponsorship license to be able to sponsor you. You should have a certificate of sponsorship from the employer containing the information about your said role of the job that you've been offered in the UK. The job that you are planning to do in the UK, you need to make sure that it's part of the list of the eligible occupations. How do you get to know? You need to contact the employer in the UK to ask for the 4-digit occupation code for that particular occupation to be able to check if indeed that occupation or that job you've been offered is part of the eligible occupations. Also, you must be paid the minimum salary for that particular occupation. For example, if you are coming into the UK as a care assistant, and if the per annum in the UK, if the per annum salary is £20,000, the employer need to state that when you come into the UK, you are going to be paid the same £20,000 per annum. It shouldn't be below. It can be above, but it shouldn't be below the minimum salary by law. For example, if let's say you are coming into the UK, you've had a sponsor from a UK approved employer, and you are coming in to work as a nurse, and let's say nurses are taking per hour. They are taking every hour. They are taking £20 per hour. That employer needs to make sure they pay you £20 per hour. Knowledge of English. You must be able to speak, read, write, and understand English. You usually need to prove your knowledge of English. One way you can do this is that if, for example, you're a degree holder back home, irrespective of your field, you would send your degree certificate to UK NARIC for them to access your certificate. And after they've accessed your certificate, they will come out and confirm that indeed all your courses were taught in English. So this is an example or one way of proving your knowledge of English. Also, if you're a doctor, a nurse, a midwife, or a dentist, and you've undergone an English assessment already where you've been approved by your regulated professional bodies, you don't need to prove this. You don't need to prove your knowledge of English because you've already done that. Also, if you had previously applied for a visa and you've already proved your knowledge of English, you wouldn't have to do it the second time. Let's say if you were coming into the UK as a student, or let's say, for example, on a visit, and you had to prove your knowledge of English. This second time around, you wouldn't have to do that. If you've already done that in a successful visa application, in court. If you've already proved your knowledge of English in a successful visa application in the past, then you don't need to prove that. Countries that do not need to prove their knowledge of English, some of these countries are Canada, New Zealand, USA, Jamaica, and many others. When you go to the www.gov.uk website, you see these countries. As for these countries, they don't need to prove their knowledge of English. How long can you stay? With your skilled worker visa, normally the maximum years you can stay in the UK is 5 years before you can extend it when it expires. Normally, you can extend it when it expires or update it when you've changed an employer or your job or your particular job that brought you here in the UK. So let me bring it down. When the 5 years is about to elapse, you can now apply for an extension. Or if the 5 years is about to elapse and you've decided to change your job or your employer, then you update your visa by applying. By your application will be in the form of updating your visa because there's been a change of an employer. Mind you, you came into the UK because of that said or that particular employer, because that particular employer gave you a sponsorship certificate before you were able to apply for the skilled worker visa. So anytime that agreed or contracted years elapse and you decide to change an employer or you decide to change that particular employer, then when you are applying, you need to update your visa. So updating it means that means they will get to know that, oh, now you've changed from employer A to employer B. And let's say if you are still with that same employer, then all you need is when you're applying, you are just extend. Want to stay longer in the UK, you can apply for extension as many times as you want. I want to take this again for you to understand. With the skilled worker visa or the tier 2 visa, if you want to stay longer in the UK, you can apply as many times as you want, so long as you meet the eligibility requirement. So long as you meet the eligibility requirement, anytime your visa expires, you can apply as many times as you want. Also, after the 5 years elapse, you can decide to apply for your indefinite leave to remain. After 5 years, you may be able to apply to settle permanently in the UK. And this is termed as indefinite leave to remain. With the indefinite leave to remain, you can live in the UK as long as you want, and it allows you to live here in the UK, work, study, and also get some benefits or enjoy some benefit. That's if only, in quote, you meet the eligibility criteria. So long as you meet their criteria or you are eligible, you will definitely benefit from all these. Basically, application is done online, but how to apply depends on whether one, you are outside the UK and coming into the UK for the first time, or now coming into the UK, or secondly, inside the UK but you are extending your current visa. So for example, let's say I'm on a skilled worker visa for 5 years and it has expired, so now I'm applying for an extension. So that's what the second point means. Or you are inside the UK and you are switching from a different visa to this particular visa we are talking about, which is the skilled worker visa. So the third one is you are inside the UK but you are switching from a different visa. So for example, I'm on a student visa and now I'm switching to a skilled worker visa. That's what the third point means. So you applying for your tier 2 visa or your skilled worker visa depends on your current circumstance. Whether you are outside the UK and you are now applying, or you are inside the UK but you are applying for extension of your current visa, or you are inside the UK but you are switching for a different visa to the tier 2 visa. So for example, switching from a student visa to a skilled worker visa. Since I made mention of switching or changing visas, I know some people will be thinking, does it mean if I'm on a visit visa, I can switch or change my visa to a skilled worker visa? Note that it's not all types of visas that you can change to a skilled worker visa or you can change to another visa. Some examples of visas that you can switch or change. An example is if you are on a visit visa, you can't switch or change that visa. If you are on a seasonal worker visa, you can change it. If you are on a parent of a child student visa, you can't also switch that visa or change it. Of visas that you can switch. Also, if you are on a short-term student visa, you can switch. A short-term student visa is, for example, for you not to be confused. For example, let's say you are here for a 6-month course, or you are in the UK for like, let's say 3 months, maybe internship kind of thing. You can't switch such a visa. But people that are in the UK, maybe doing a whole year, let's say master's degree or a 3 years PhD, those kind of or category of students, they are not short-term student visas. Because when we talk of short-term, normally short-term is less than a year. Let's keep that in mind. Normally a short-term period is within 6 months. So people that are on short-term student visa that are normally within 6 months, they cannot switch their visa, for example, from student visa to tier 2 or skilled worker visa. But someone who is here to do, let's say, a whole year master's degree or a PhD, such people are not, their visas are not short-term visas. They can apply or they can switch to another visa. For example, they can switch from their student visa to a skilled worker visa, because someone coming into the UK to do a master's program for a year is a long term, not a short term. Let's keep that in mind as well. Note, if you want to change your job or employer, you need to make sure you apply to update your visa. You can't just change your job or your employer because you came into the UK because of the sponsorship certificate you had from that said employer. So if you are switching or changing that particular employer, you need to update the immigration people. You need to update them by applying to update your visa. Also, you need to keep in mind that if you had a sponsorship from back home to come into the UK to work as a nurse, you need to make sure that as you come into the UK, after everything is successful, when you come into the UK, you need to make sure that you come in and work as a nurse and not as any other career or profession. Even if you are working as a nurse and you want to, let's say, do extra jobs or let's say extra hours with other, let's say, employers or agencies, you need to make sure the extra jobs you are picking is also in line with the nursing profession. So you can't come into the UK with your skilled worker visa or your tier 2 visa, work for the said employer that gave you the sponsorship, and then pick extra jobs with other, let's say, agencies, and let's say, for example, work as a warehouse person. So anything you come into the UK to do, so long as you came into the UK to work as a nurse, you make sure you go in line with that profession, because that can also affect your visa. In case you want to extend it, it can be rejected. So you need to be very mindful of that. What you were sponsored to come into the UK to do, you make sure you do that. Whether you are picking extra job or you want to do extra hours, you need to make sure all the extra jobs or the extra hours you are doing is still in line with the same profession. For example, if you came into the UK to work as a nurse. So let's be mindful of that as well. Also, with the skilled worker visa, you can apply for your children, you can apply for your kids or your wife or your partner to come into the UK or to stay in the UK as your dependent, so long as they meet the eligibility criteria. That is with a skilled worker visa. So if your skilled worker visa states that you are coming into the UK for 5 years, when you apply for your partner and your children, so long as they meet the eligibility criteria, they are also allowed to stay in the UK for that said years or that number of years, which is the 5 years that you've had. When it comes to the application fee cost for your skilled worker visa or your tier 2 visa, you can find that online on the www.gov.uk website. And whilst you are doing your application, depending on your circumstance, will determine your application fee. So for example, if you are applying for yourself, your partner, and your 3 children, each individual is going to pay an application fee. So for example, if the application fee for an individual is £500, then that means it's going to be £500 times 5. That is yourself, your partner, and your 3 kids. So that's going to be a total of £2,500. So you need to keep that in mind as well. You would also need to pay the healthcare surcharge every year of your stay in the UK. So throughout your 5 years, you will need to pay every year a healthcare surcharge. You need to keep that in mind as well. So on the www.government.uk website or on the government.uk website, the standard or the application fee is over there. The range is over there depending on your circumstance. So I would want to give you the exact figures. In case you see me bending down, I actually want to give you the exact figures. So on the government.uk website, the application fee, standard fee, ranges from £625 to £1,423, depending on your circumstance, as I earlier said or stated. The healthcare surcharge that I talked about, that you would also need to pay per every year of your stay in the UK, on the government.uk website, the healthcare surcharge is stated there as £624 per year. So that's the surcharge you are going to pay per year. With the application fee, if you are applying outside the UK for up to 3 years, your standard fee is £625 per person. Per person, meaning that if you are coming with your partner and your 3 kids, per person, everyone is going to pay an application fee of £625. That is if it's for up to 3 years. And if it's more than 3 years, then your standard fee for the application is £1,235 per person. £1,235 per person. Also note that if you are coming with your partner and your kids and your said job is on the shortage list, then you and your household, your application fee is going to be lower. Also note that if your said job is on the shortage list, Your application fee for you and your household, for example, if you're applying for yourself, your partner, and your kids, then that means you and your household, your application or your standard fee will be lower as compared to someone coming to do a particular job that is not on the shortage list. So if your said job is on the shortage list, if it's up to 3 years, your said standard fee is £479. Please pardon me if you see me looking down because I want to give an accurate figure. So if your said job is on the shortage list, if it's up to your application or your standard fee is £479 per person. So you can see the reduction. If it's not on the shortage list, if it's up to 3 years, it's £625 per person. But if it's on the shortage list for up to 3 years per person, you'll be paying an application fee of £479. And if it's more than 3 years, your application fee will be £943 per person. That is if the said job is on the shortage list. But if the said job is not on the shortage list, then your application fee, if it's more than 3 years, you'll be paying £1,235 per year. So you need to note that as well. Money to support yourself. You need to prove that you have £1,270 equivalent depending on the country you're applying your visa from. If it's Ghana, then you need to prove that you have £1,270 equivalent in your account as at the time of applying for your visa. If you are from Nigeria, you need to also make sure that you have equivalent of £1,270 in your Naira account as at the time of applying for this visa. And this money needs to sit in your account for the next 28 days in a row. And on the 28th day, it should actually be within 31 days. So you can't take the money out within 28 days, or even on the 28th day, you can't take the money out. So you need to be mindful of that as well. To be on the safer side, just let the money stay in your account for 31 days. Basically, this money is to prove that when you come into the UK, you can use this money to support yourself financially for your first month. You are only exempted if you've stayed in the UK and you have a valid visa for at least 12 months. I would want to put a disclaimer out there. All this information I'm giving is based on personal experience and also based on my own research. So if you want to know more, please kindly visit the government.uk website. And also, I'm not an immigration expert. So if you want to know more, please kindly visit the government.uk website. So we've come to the end of today's episode, and I want to say thank you for watching today's episode. I hope it has been very helpful. Please don't forget to subscribe, click on the notification button, like, and also share this video so that others can also benefit. Thank you.